I'm going to kick us off. A very brief intro before I start sharing screen is just in case anybody's completely brand new, Rainbow Writes Restaurants. It's what we love. We have a very robust product. We've built it out to be as specialized and in-depth for restaurants as we possibly can, so that you and your insured can feel very comfortable that when you place a policy with us, you are placing something that is going to be secure for your insured's business, right? And so we got all kinds of options in our coverage that you'll see here very shortly. We are structured as an MGA, and for us, that means that we do almost everything that a carrier does, with one major exception. It is not our writing paper. We write on Accelerant's paper, and they are A- rated, excellent, size 9. It took me a second to spit that out. In the admitted market, right? So it's our forms that we filed on. We handle the underwriting, which we're very excited to have Adrian here and joining us for that. We take care of all your service stuff, everything that it is that you would expect from a typical carrier. It's just Accelerant's paper that we write on, and we're actually really proud to represent them. Many of you probably already know them. They've been around the marketplace for quite some time. They have a fantastic rating with AM Best. So if you want any more information on that, we'll be happy to share, but we write through Accelerant. Okay, so with all that said, let's go ahead and switch over. Wow, that's a lot of screens. There. Okay. What you are looking at is our demo environment. And I have it because I'm an employee here. I use the demo environment as opposed to production. It should look almost exactly the same as you as an agent logging in. There might be a slight difference or two, and if it pops up, I'll point it out. But for the most part, just know this is pretty much what it's going to look like for you when you sign in. Okay, so obviously once you've written with us for a little bit, you'll have a number of policies that show up here on this screen as well. So we're looking forward to that with you. But one of the things that's really neat about just this entry-level screen is, yes, these are all the policies you've written, but at a glance, you can see whether or not a payment is overdue. This is a new feature that we recently added just to kind of help you have more awareness if something is behind in payments. But there are a number of things you can do from within this policy screen. You click this little arrow next to the policy that you want to review, and we've got a snapshot of some of the main coverages with it. You can grab the policy docs. You can submit first notice of loss through our partner, North American Risk Services, and we have had a fantastic partnership with them. Many of you probably already know them. They've been around in the market for a while, but we've had nothing but compliments. They've taken great care of our insureds. So we've been really happy to partner with them. But North American Risk Services is who we administer our claims through, and this would be where you would start the reporting process for that. It's right here within your dashboard. Another thing is that Naomi and I and our team, we take care of the endorsements for you as well. Sometimes Adrian and his team helps out with those too. And the way that you get those over to us is with this request and endorsement inside. So it'll automatically be associated to this policy. And all you got to do is just fill out a real quick form, give us some description based on what it is that you need, check the box, and you're off to the races. We'll be happy to help you out with that. One last thing to show here that's a really nice feature is that we have all of the payment schedule here within this policies tab as well. So you can see what all's been paid, and sometimes even more importantly, what's late and what needs paid still. And you've got that option to click the button and go in here and add a new payment type so that it can be brought back up to paid up to date. Of note, your insured will also get a login. When you bind a policy with Rainbow, the insured gets access to their policy through the same login portal that it is that you use, but it'll be associated to the email that you set them up with when you bind the policy. They can't do most of these things, but one thing they can do is come in here and see the payment schedule and submit payment. So it's a nice little feature that you may be able to remind them about if it comes up, you want them to put the payment in on their end. It's a little hard to get a hold of them, whatever the case may be. They can sign into their account just the same as you can. Click that pay now, add a new payment, and catch everything up to date. All right, so we're going to skip quotes for now. We'll go to settings, pretty straightforward. Change your name, email address, password, that kind of stuff. Resources is a phenomenal tab that, it's pretty self-explanatory, but this is a great chance to shout out all the wonderful work that Morgan does to make sure that you and your insureds have tons of materials to help you out in your businesses, in your respective businesses, right? So, whether it's cooking temps and closing and opening checklists for the restaurant, or a simple SEO strategy for your agency. They've done a fantastic job of making sure that you get all of these materials and in a nice compact place that you can grab them and use them as you need. We want to be the #1 resource for you with your restaurant insureds. But there's a couple of things that I like to point out on this screen in particular. Our appetite guide is fantastic. I'm going to open it so you can see, but obviously this is very small. We're not going to try to get into all the in-depthness of it, but definitely check this out because there's lots of really good things here. For instance, I get asked pretty regularly, well, what if the restaurant also sells or allows for hookah? And right here, you can see that that's an ineligible exposure, right? Happy hour after 8 p.m. Like there's a number of things in here that you can see. We keep it up to date. We make sure that you understand. So definitely make sure that you go through and check that out. And then the other thing I'm just going to touch on really briefly, because we're going to talk about it here in the presentation in just a few moments. But this inspection and cleaning schedule, a lot of our underwriting follows the National Fire Protection Association, which is exactly what it is that your restaurant insureds are meant to follow as well. So none of this would really be a surprise to them. But for those of us who don't open and run and work in a restaurant every single day, this little cheat sheet is helpful to know, like, okay, well, if they have wok cooking, then the expectation by the NFPA is that they clean their hoods quarterly, right? So there's a number of resources in here, and I'll touch on this in a little bit, so I'm not going to dive into it too much, but it'll be very helpful as you go through the quoting process. All right, so that covers a lot of the basics. When you're ready to start a brand new quote, you just click this big green button here, start a new quote. A lot of this is straightforward demographic stuff. Legal name, DBA is optional. Like I mentioned earlier, add in that contact email address so and it serves two functions, right? Anytime we need to send out notice to the insured on, when an endorsement's been processed or if, they're behind in payments, like a number of different things, that email address is used for it in conjunction with yours as well. You will get notice too. And then also this is how they log in, right? And you'll see at the end of the quoting process that there's more that they can do than just catch up payments and print their policy docs, although those are really nice features as well. So you're going to want to make sure that even if your insured doesn't have an email address, that they go out and they get one of the free ones from Gmail, Yahoo, wherever, and they get set up with this so that they can log in and access all of the information that's going to be available to them. Okay, and then location address, just note that the literal only thing that we cannot change post-quote or post-bind is physical location. It is core to our underwriting, so it requires you to requote or to unfortunately cancel and rewrite if the physical location changes. So if the insured moves. Now there's some exceptions to that if they need to change their mailing address, if it's something as simple as just like, well, we forgot to add the suite number or, whatever the case may be. There's obviously exceptions to that. However, it is all, that's the one thing that it is that we can't change by endorsement. So I just like to take a second to point that out. All right, so I'm not going to go through the process so you don't have to see me type. Instead, I'm going to go into a quote that I've already made and is mostly filled out. But before I do that, I want to show you the quote screen. Yes. Okay. So draft means that there are missing pieces, right? You've just got to get in and fill a couple things out and then it'll be ready to go. So pretty straightforward. Declined. Just know that that's not the end of the road. You're going to hear me say that a number of times. And obviously there can be good declination reasons that, we might not be as flexible about, like locations within 35 miles of the coast. We may not be able to do anything with that. However, in some circumstances, like California isn't nearly as, volatile as over on the East Coast. So there are circumstances in which even if this is declined, we love for you to reach out to us. One of our big philosophies here at Rainbow is that while we are utilizing this tech to make this as easy and straightforward of a process for you, you can go from beginning to end and never speak to another human. We have a very flexible system as well. That means that anything that you want to bend and break, if it is appropriate for your insured, you reach out to Adrian and he'll take care of all of it for you. He will give you pricing credits. He will make exceptions to rules. He'll do all the things, right? But in all reality, like that's why we built the system that we did, because we love to hear those stories. We realize that every restaurant is unique. And so while there may be still obviously reasons we can't write every single risk out there, even if you wind up with a decline, doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the road. If you think that we should make an exception based on these declination reasons, maybe not applying in a way that you think that we might have intended for them to apply, we would love for you to reach out. We have those conversations every day and we look forward to them. It's part of how it is that we do business. All right, so we'll go back to that. That's a decline and expire. Our quotes are good for 60 days. So you can quote further out in advance. Just know that if you don't bind it within that 60-day window, your quote will expire and it will need requoted. It's pretty straightforward. Honestly, the reason that we do it is because we can't guarantee rates for all eternity. So 60 days is the setup. If you wind up with a day or two over, reach out to us. We can unlock it. But for the most part, that's why that's in there. Just note our quotes are good for 60 days. And then the last other thing that I want to point out to you is this action required refer now. Because our system is so bendable and because we love working with you so much, we make sure that you're ready to submit it to us when it comes in, right? So what that means is that some of the answers that you give in questions will flag that, hey, an underwriter needs to review this, right? Now, that's not always the case. Many times it just goes straight through and you're good to go. But if it's something that's a little bit more on the fringe, you'll get the fact that it needs to be referred. But it does not automatically refer, right? We leave it at this option in case you weren't certain about some questions, you wanted to reach back out to the insured and verify some things. Maybe you just wanted to see that initial quoting premium and see how it stacks up in the market. There's a number of reasons why you may not want our underwriters to take a look at it just yet. So we hold off on actually reviewing it until you click that refer now button. And we do our best to give you as many signs as possible that that button hasn't been clicked yet, right? So in big letters here, click refer now to request a manual review, click the button there. You saw on the previous screen, action required refer now. Once you do that, the status will be classed as referred. And so it is very much different, and you will hear from our underwriting team usually within the same day, or at least 1 to 2 business days, depending on, how much volume we've had for the time or whatever. Obviously, we're continuing to grow. We're very proud of the fact that Adrian's here with us now, and we're going to keep growing so that we make sure that we still maintain those service level expectations, and we can get back to you as fast as possible. But similar to the declination, you're going to see the reasons why this is referred in every single one of these two. We never want to leave you guessing. We want to make sure that you understand why. That way you can have a conversation with us if you think that maybe it didn't apply, or you want to talk to us about like why it is that we made the decision we did. All right, so now we're going to go back to this one. I happen to know this one's basically finished. So normally it would say bindable, and actually let's do that really quick. I'm going to skip through a lot of this stuff really fast just so you can see, because what happens is that you can go through the entire quote process and hit bindable immediately and never need to speak to any of us. Alternatively, you can have this referred, like what I just showed you, and when underwriting comes back to you, they will respond and say like, hey, we've reviewed this all and we've approved it. We don't have any further questions. We don't need any further information. And so then what happens is that they unlock this in your dashboard so that it shows that it is bindable at that point. So either way you get to that bindable status, all that means is that it's ready for you to put in payment information and you're good to go. You can click the bind button and everything is ready. All right, so hopping back into it, I just want you to be able to see that status. Okay, so a couple of these things are front loaded that are going to take a little bit longer to explain, but you will see as we go through this, it's actually a very quick quoting process. It usually will only take you about 10 minutes at the most, especially once you get used to using it. I just talk a lot. That's what I do for a living. So it might take us a couple minutes longer to get through this. All right, but please choose a class of food service. Again, we are Rainbow for restaurants. We love restaurants, so that's what it is that you're going to see here. You're not going to see, auto body shops or anything else. It's just going to be restaurants. Now, there are a couple of things to note with this. Wine bars and above are all open classes for us. We recently branched out into brew pubs as well. Those submissions are going to require manual review while we still enter into them. So just make sure that you're giving us a little bit more time on those. But note that we are not a home for bars and taverns, mobile food vendors, or warehouse exposures. There's exceptions to 2 of the 3 of these. So when it comes to bars and taverns, we don't look at them the same way that most of the rest of the market does. Jason's Bar and Grill does not automatically flag, well, it says bar in the name, so it's out. That's not how we look at it, right? We can do up to 65% in alcohol sales as well, right? So I will show you how it is that we determine a bar, but it's not just that simple, like try to get it out as fast as possible that you see in the marketplace sometimes. We actually have some pretty robust, I guess it's twice I've used that word now. We have some pretty wide variety on the type of risks that we can write. Okay. When it comes to warehouses, we can do ghost kitchens. We just can't. What we want to do is make sure that it is the insured who is selling the product, right? So the reason that warehouses are out is that we don't want them to be just a step along the manufacturing chain. We want them to be the ones who are making and selling, right? So just keep in mind that even though warehouses is there and that's out, we can do ghost kitchens in conjunction with them selling the food somewhere. And then finally, mobile food vendors. Unfortunately, we can't do food carts. We can't do food trucks. We just don't have the coverages for it, at least not at this time. So those are flat out out. And I get questions every once in a while about like, okay, well, I clicked on mobile food vendors, but then I got a decline. Why is that even in there? Well, because the alternative is if we don't put it in there, we get all kinds of questions about like, okay, well, I want to quote a mobile food vendor. How should I class this? Right. So just know that that's not in there as like a trick or a set you up or anything. It's just so that folks who aren't as familiar are just getting started with us. They can see that, yes, you can click on mobile food vendors, but we're not actually a home for those at present time anyway. Okay, so everything wine bars and above is great. We can do the wine bars, we can do brew pubs, all the rest, that's good. Multi-location, our system is built for single location policies only. Okay, we can write multi-location, but what that means is that each one is entered separately. Obviously not ideal in all circumstances. However, we have a number of risks that are written this way. We have lots of agents and lots of insureds who love working with us, love the products that it is that we offer, are happy with those individual limits per location, are good to split up the exposure costs so that it's really not charging anything all that extra. Like, so really it just comes down to spending an extra 10 minutes in the system quoting or whatever. So that said, if there are multiple locations, you will want to click the yes and just agree that you understand that there is a designated premises endorsement that is put on these. Now, the last little caveat to this is that we do on occasion get submissions for a dozen restaurants, for 20, for 100 restaurants, right? And we still want to be able to consider those with you. Those would all be taken offline. If you have something that is that high of a volume, please reach out to us and we will work on that with you directly. That would not be submitted in the system. Just know that if you've got 3, 4, sometimes even 5 locations, the best way to do it is to just to enter each of them in individually. And I think you'll be pretty happy with the results. Okay, claims in the last 3 years, as long as it's not over 50,000, not a problem. You just fill that out if you say yes. And this is a great first example of how our system is very intuitive. A lot of the questions disappear if they're not applicable, but you can see when I click on yes, it asks about how many claims there were, did the value exceed 50,000? And you'll see that as we go through the process. There's a number of hidden questions that only pop up. So it's a really nice little feature that is part of the quoting process. A lot of this I'm going to skip, interrupt me if you have any questions, but it's simple stuff like, is the business owner a criminal? All right, we're going to say no. Do they have stairs used by patrons? If you say yes, we just want to make sure that they are properly secure and safe. So that's not an out. We just want to make sure that the insured is taking safety precautions. All right, this is what I referenced earlier. Does the establishment offer any of the below? This is how we determine whether or not they are a bar per rainbow standards, right? And you saw this when I went through the appetite guide a moment ago too. Happy hour between 8 p.m. and close. Do they serve alcohol after midnight? Do they have drink specials under 4? Just know that if you click some of these things, they may wind up in a decline, but we have made exceptions on occasion. Don't expect it all the time, but for instance, if it's a small town that is really rural, alcohol drink specials under $4 is probably going to be the norm. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't want to write them. Instead, what we're going to be looking at is like, okay, well, is that all they sell? Is it just, Bud Light and Coors Light on tap for $2 all day, every day, right? Like that to us would not be interesting. Would not be a risk that we would want to write. Whereas, if that happens on occasion, like one time a week, they've got from 4 to 6 p.m., they've got a $3 special on something. Like we can still consider that. So you'd still want to check the box to be accurate, but then reach out to us if that flags and have a conversation with us. But a lot of the other stuff is going to be pretty straightforward. You might have quickly caught that we don't do dance floors. Sometimes we can consider that if, it's like a constructible one that they set up on occasion, as long as there's not a huge band. Like we look at a lot of factors. We really do try to meet your insured and it'll make sense and understand if it's truly a bar versus something that it is that we want to write. Playground is the same as the stairs. Actually, we don't mind if they have a playground. We just want to make sure that they're following the safety procedures. This is another box to check to make sure that there is no food cart associated, food truck associated. Even if they have a brick and mortar, we cannot write the food truck. So this is just another filter to make sure that even if you've classed it as something else, but they have a food truck on the side, like this picks it up. One thing to note though is that these are not all declinations, right? So this is where you would identify if it's a ghost kitchen, for instance, right? And if anybody on the call doesn't know what that is, I'm sure all of you do. I didn't when I started. Essentially, it's a commissary. That was a term that I was familiar with. It's somewhere else that they prep the food and then wind up selling it in another place. So that's why it's a ghost kitchen, right? So you can use that term interchangeably with commissary as well. Fire alarm, burglar alarm, recording, all that straightforward. Does the establishment have more than 6 deep fat fryer units? If you have an establishment that has that, reach out. I'd love to know because I don't think a single person has yet. Responsible for the parking lot? Yes, it's just a rating question. No, either way is fine. This is what I mentioned earlier as far as the cleaning and the NFPA goes, right? So here we're not identifying these as like we don't want them. Instead, what we're doing is if you select walk, we want to make sure that the insured is cleaning at least quarterly. Again, utilize that cheat sheet that I showed you earlier to make sure that you're checking on these. Your insured should know that, right? And obviously we want you to answer it truthfully too, but just know that that's what it is that we're looking for with this question, is that they're following the NFPA guidelines. All right. Remodeling or renovation. Actually, we're okay with that. We get questions every once in a while like, well, what if, the insured needs this policy in place, but they're remodeling before grand opening in 2 weeks? You say yes. You just want to make sure that it doesn't meet any of these requirements, like work should be completed within a maximum of 90 days, right? So this is still going to include a lot of that stuff. So keep an eye on that. Know that like we could still potentially be a home for it, as long as it fits those guidelines, even if they're doing a bit of remodeling. Now, obviously, we don't offer any sort of like builder's risk, like those sort of things. And that's really kind of what it is that we're trying to filter out. Is the establishment cash only? This is a hard decline. If you say yes, you will get a declination on this. Now, one thing to note is I got for the first time ever a question recently that is great because I get to point it out here. Well, what if they accept checks as well? So really what it is that we're looking for here is whether or not they have a point of sale system, a POS system that they're logging these sales in, as opposed to just over the counter cash that is not being recorded anywhere, right? That's what it is, the differentiation that we're trying to make here. So just note that like cash only is absolutely out. However, like if they do some sort of like fringe payment system or whatever, we want to make sure that it's being logged in a POS, and then we could potentially still consider it. Number of employees, part-time, full-time, hours of open. Okay, so year the establishment was open, we love new ventures. It's not a problem to write with us. This is another circumstance in which you'll get a pop-up question. If I say that it was open this year, we just want to make sure that the management has at least 3 years of experience, in which case, as long as the answer is yes, we love to work with them. Okay, ownership structure, maximum occupancy, all that straightforward. All right. We rate our restaurants off of sales, not square footage. We can do up to 10 mil in TIV. So just know that's how that works. You will, so the demo environment, this is another one of the nuances of the demo environment. We actually offer an excess product now. If you're not aware of it, I can show you on our website where that is the case. You can see what all states we're in. This is a great transition into this. And then you can also see that in most of those same states, we offer an excess product as well. The intent is to eventually offer it in every single one of those states. It's just not quite there with some of them yet. Probably the most notable one that we get asked about regularly is California, but you can see we just launched with North Carolina, Virginia, and those will be coming here soon too as well. We filed for them. We're looking forward to some good information, some good news from the DOI at some point here in the near future. That said, if we offer excess in the state in which you're trying to quote, 2.4 will not be available. It won't even show up in here. So if you walk away from this and wonder like, why are the 2.4 limits not there? That's why, because our Accelerant, as I explained earlier, is our writing partner. And we agreed with them that we wanted to be able to offer higher limits for restaurants right out of the gate. But while we were working on our excess filing, we wanted to be able to give our restaurants, our agents, some additional options. And that's why they allowed us to have the 2.4 for the time. Note that if you are in one of those states in which it still applies, we do have to send that up to Accelerant for review. So give us a little bit of extra lead time. Know that if you have questions about it, we have to go back up to them for approval, all of that. However, in the states in which we have the excess now, that has replaced it. You will not see the 2.4 on there. We can do excess up to 3 mil over our BOP and up to 1 mil over our liquor liability. We can handle those limits in-house. And you'll see where you get a prompt later on for whether or not you want to quote on those. All right, again, this is really weird. I'm not getting interrupted with questions. I'll assume that I'm just explaining it perfectly. I'm glad to give myself that credit.
You
Okay.
you are doing a great job, Jason. We do have some questions, but I'm just holding for when you are getting closer to that.
You're just making me paranoid is what it is. Have I lost the entire audience? Did everybody just check out on me? All right. No, that's good to know. Thank you, Morgan.
Yes.
Okay. We can do catering up to 100%. That's not a problem. This is just a question where it is that we identify it, and then you'll want to put your percentages in here. So that's another way in which we stand out in the market beyond just like our flexibility, our involvement with the underwriting team, beyond the 65% liquor sales, beyond all those things that we do. We can also write 100% catering, and it's going to be tough to find that in the admitted market. So if they serve alcohol, like I said, again, for the third time, we can do up to 65% in alcohol sales. And the reason I keep saying it is huge. It stands out in the marketplace. And what's more is that we actually offer assault and battery automatically included up to 50% of that. And so this is a really neat little thing that our system does. So I'll put in that the estimated annual sales of alcohol is 50%. Please note, I'm going to put a little caveat in one of the things I just said. If your insured has above 50% in alcohol sales, assault and battery is still an option, but it is not automatically included. 50% and below, automatically included up to the limit. But above 51% and above, so up to 65%, you'll get this additional question about whether or not you want to add it, and you can choose the limits that you want to add it up to. All right, so just know that if you don't see that on there because your liquor percentage is lower, that's why it's automatically included. Now, this is a great plug that I always forget to do, which is bizarre because Naomi, look at that. Naomi or I are always signed in. I'm going to close this and then that's going to change here in just a second. Naomi and I are always signed into chat. Sometimes it's one of the underwriters, like whomever it is. We're open. We are open from 8 to 8 Eastern time, from 5 to 5 Pacific. I shut it off, y'all. That's on me. Usually this is my chat shift, and I just wanted to focus my attention on you. But regardless, this is an excellent opportunity to reach out to us, chat with us live and directly, and almost always it's me, Naomi, one of the underwriters. Actually, it always is. I don't know why I said almost always. As long as it's within those hours, most of the time it's Naomi or I, or it's one of the underwriters hopping on chat. Adrian's going to be training on it here very soon with me too. So you'll get Adrian if you reach out here soon, and that'll be fun. Throw some crazy questions his way. But regardless, this is a great opportunity for you to ask, like, hey, why is this thing happening the way that it is? If you've got questions about it, is assault and battery, just to kind of tie it back in. Is assault and battery included? Why is it not popping up? Ask in the chat. We love to hear that. And Naomi and I will be glad to help you out with that. Okay, so confirming that they fall ServSafe, all that stuff. Liquor liability limit, know that it is a separate limit from the GL, right? So you can offer up to 1 mil. And again, I'll plug that we have that excess of 1 mil above that we can offer quoting on. Note if it's not available in the state, 1 mil. If excess is not available in the state, 1 mil is the limit then. So even if you can get the 2.4 on the GL, unfortunately, 1 mil on the liquor is the highest that Rainbow can go. HNOA, we love to write it, bring it on. Just not if they do their own delivery, which I doubt any of you are surprised by. Nobody in the admitted market really writes a lot of that. We can do third-party delivery. That's not a problem. Check the box. It's all good. We cannot do robotic delivery, which was a new thing for me as well. Although I will caveat, I saw it in, I never hear us talk about this, but I saw it in an airport, and I thought it was like the coolest, most innovative thing ever. However, apparently they also use it in college towns, and it is just not a good idea. So if you're ever curious, look up some videos on that, check it out. We do not do robotic delivery. We can do third party, and we can also do no third party, right? As long as they're not doing self-delivery, then we love to write the HNOA as well. All right, property coverage. Frame all the way up to fire resistive. It's all open to us. It's just a rating question. What year was the building built? We're not going to automatically decline based on year. We get this question pretty frequently. So if it's an older building, that's not a problem. Even if it's frame, that's not a problem. We want to make sure that they're up to date on some other things. And our underwriting team may have some follow-up questions just to make sure that it's a good risk to be on. But for the most part, just know that you're not going to get an automatic declination for those reasons. When was the roof replaced? We look for it to have been replaced within the last 20 years, unless it's a metal roof type, in which case 30 years. Okay. And then you'll see where you can fill that out. And then I think the reason that I don't get it is because, yeah, if it's more than 25 years, so let's adjust this so that we can see. Let's do just 1990 when the year was built. We should get some pop-up. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so 25 years. This is like, it even stumps me sometimes. The system is so intuitive. If it is, as long as the electrical wiring or plumbing has been updated, replaced within the last 25 years, we're good there too. That's what it is we're looking for: age of roof, age of wiring and plumbing. Now, every once in a while, we'll get a question of like, are insured is the tenant here? They don't know. The building owners doesn't know. Sorry, y'all. The building owner doesn't know when it was last updated. So what we're going to look for instead is some sort of information about like, hey, was this inspected and was it all up to code and cleared by the inspector? So you'll reach out to us through chat. You'll reach out to us through underwriting, and we'll help you out with that if for some reason, it needs to be outside of 25 and you think that there's a good reason for that. So we are a little bit flexible on that. Just know that that's our general guideline. It's 25 years electrical and plumbing, 20 years on roof. Unless it's metal, it's 30. All right. Fire sprinkler system is a rating question, yes or no. You'll still be able to quote it with us. Total square feet occupied, again, rating question. BPP, 200,000. Okay, do you wish to add building coverage? So we can do total insured value, TIV, up to 5 mil. Combination of BPP and building, right? So if you choose to add building coverage, all of that will be calculated. It'll let you know if you've gone above the 5 mil that we can write. But you put that in and you get a number of additional drop-down questions about whether or not they want ordinance law, mine subsidence if they're in the appropriate states, that sort of thing. We're going to say no building coverage so I can show you tenants improvements and betterments as well. Now, we don't mind which way you want to class this. You can either put it as BPP or you can put it as tenant improvements and betterments. Whatever the case may be, either one of those is fine for your improvements. So AOP deductible is pretty straightforward. Winds and hail, let's put a pin in this one really quick because we do use some data partners to determine some things. And one of the things in particular where that will be seen on your end more than anywhere else is this wind hail deductible. So please note that if you go through this quoting process and the system automatically sets you to 1%, great. You can do 2%, 5%. You can remove wind hail, but you cannot do no separate deductible. You can't go lower than what the system automatically sets you at, or else you will get an error and the screen will not allow you to progress. So if you came in and it automatically set you to 2%, you couldn't do 1 or no separate, right? So just know that that's the baseline. We use that to calculate. You can always reach out and ask us about it, but I got to warn you in advance, like we follow that pretty regularly. So, stick it to the lowest amount or increase the deductible, however it is that you want. You just can't go below what it's preset to. All right. Is the location any of the following? All of these, they're just rating questions. The one big exception to that is whether or not it's attached to habitational. We're not going to write the habitational. The reason that this question exists is obviously for fire safety and various other things. We want to know, is this unit occupied by the owner or the general manager of the restaurant? And or are there firewalls between the restaurant and the habitational? As long as one of these is yes, then it's okay that it's attached to habitational. If I was to say this and click continue, it would give me a declination. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to have to go back through and do all this again. But regardless, just know that we can write attached to hab as long as it meets one of these 2 requirements.
Hey, Jason,
Yeah.
I'm gonna pause you so that we can just go through some of these questions that you did answer, but just to clarify and just make sure that the folks who asked them heard them. So Dennis had asked, can you insure a restaurant with apartments above it? The business owner owns the building. So again, you just answered that.
Well, sort of. Yes. It actually doesn't matter whether or not the business owner owns the building. It's about those other 2 questions. But yes, absolutely. Thank you.
And then we had a question from John and also from Tommy regarding how far away the risk is from the coast. I know that you're probably going to go into referrals at the end, but if you just wanted to briefly touch on this so that they know that we are not ignoring their questions.
Yeah, absolutely. The general rule is 35 miles from the coast. We can't write anything closer to that. And every once in a while we'll get a question like, well, what if we do it without property whatsoever? We just can't write within 35 miles of the coast, at least not at this time. Our BOP, we do not offer like GL or property only policies. We only offer the BOP or the excess. So there's really no way to exclude it. And that's just part of our agreement right now, is that, you know, we're not going to write within that. Now, like I mentioned earlier, we can make exceptions to that based on the territory itself. While that might be the general rule, there are certain coastal regions that are far less volatile than others, as far as, you know, wind hail exposures and that kind of thing. So if you feel like, you know, we should be considering this because it's in one of those regions where it doesn't necessarily apply, reach out. We'd love to hear from you and we'll chat with you about it. But just know that the general rule is 35 miles from the coast.
Thanks, Jason. And I'm just gonna quickly add to that in case folks have this question in their head and haven't asked it quite yet, but we also get a lot of questions from especially California folks regarding wildfire exposure. So I don't know if you want to just briefly touch on that.
Yeah. Sure. So we use a data partner to determine the wildfire exposure. If for some reason that's a wonderful question, Morgan. Thank you very much. If for some reason it does flag and we decline based on wildfire, you can request that we review it, and we do on a regular basis. The big things that we're going to be looking for is, you know, obviously like PC, the defensible space, a number of different things that kind of apply. And if we can get some good like satellite imagery and understand the risk and know that, you know, it's not surrounded by trees and that there's lots of defensible space, you know, we could potentially still consider it. But yes, you know, wildfire exposure can be a reason that we decline sometimes too.
Thank you. And then just two more questions. These are from Tommy. Just if you could just refresh when folks want to enter in a multi-location and they're doing separate quotes, how should they be clicking to the question of, are there multi-locations?
You should say yes. And it'll apply that designated premises endorsement on there, but you'll still be able to quote it. So in all of this, as many times, and that's a really great question, because I cannot iterate on that enough. Like, as many times as I tell you that we love to really understand your risk, we can make exceptions on all kinds of things. We still want you to go through and answer it accurately, because that's how it is that we help determine rate. We, you know, make sure that we understand the risk that we're on, et cetera. All of that, please answer it all accurately, and then reach out to us and say like, hey, can you still allow this? Because we're not going to break the system by faking an answer. Our underwriters actually have the flexibility to allow something to pass through, even if it hits that as a declination. So we want it to all stay accurate. So please, yes, go through and answer yes on multi-location or any of those. Even after you talk to the team and they say, yeah, we're still good on this, you're still going to want to answer accurately, and then they'll give you the bypass to get past it.
Thank you, Jason. And then Tommy also asked about 24-hour risks.
Got the tough questions today. So we do actually, we write 24-hour risks. This is just working on somebody with an IHOP recently, which, by the way, apparently sells beer and wine in some states. Never would have imagined that. You're nodding like you know. Okay. Yeah, apparently this Midwestern boy had no clue that you could drink beer with your pancakes at IHOP. Regardless, so as long as they don't have alcohol, that's really kind of the stance. If they're not selling alcohol, we can consider them from 24 hours. Obviously, it's going to need to adhere to some of the other, all of the other underwriting guidelines, and it's going to be something that we look at as a whole. But we have and will consider 24-hour risks as long as there's no alcohol sales.
Thanks, Jason. And just quickly, Jerry asked about pricing flexibility. So Jerry, I just want to let you know that we're going to be getting to that in just a moment here under the discount section. So if you could just wait like 3 more minutes, probably we'll be there.
Yeah, it's my favorite question too. In this, it's a great question from the audience, but in the quoting process too, y'all will see. I get a little geeked out over it. Okay, anyway. Yeah, okay, carry on. You said that was it, right, Morgan?
Correct.
Okay, cool. We're gonna keep trucking on. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so optional coverages. Just like about everybody else, we have a premier package, and it's pretty straightforward. You know, obviously on the primary, it's a great side-by-side comparison that Morgan's helped build alongside our underwriters. So you can see what's offered in the primary versus what's offered in the premier. Most of the time, you're going to want to sell the premier to your insured because, you know, it's additional coverages that might not exist on the base policy or increase coverages beyond, you know, what's already there. So that said, one thing to point out on the screen is that many of these are customizable, okay? And note that like it's customizable whether or not you add the premier on, okay? So you add in, you keep it at primary, you want to add contamination shutdown, you can. You add on the premier and you want to increase the limits of it, you can. So note that there is a good number of these that are customizable as well. All right, and then equipment breakdown is optional if you are only doing the primary, and it's included if you do premier, and I'll show you what that means. So if I say yes, you're not going to get a question about equipment breakdown, and I get asked that every once in a while, like, where is it? Well, if you put the premier on, it's automatically included. If you say no, you get that option to add it on here, right? So that's another one of those hidden questions that kind of relates to whether or not it's already a part of it. We can increase wine collection limits. We offer cyber, we offer EPLI, and we offer equipment breakdown through Hartford Steam and Boiler. So a very well-known name in the industry that I would be shocked if any of you said that you'd never heard of before. And they're directly integrated into the system. It is their forms that wind up on the policy. And if you select that you want to add any of those on here, the questions that you get after that will be the questions that they need to do the underwriting. And it's all seamlessly integrated. You don't have to go anywhere else, ask for anything else. We offer it as though it's one of our own within the system, but you will see it as their forms on the policy, and obviously a very well-known name and reliable name in the industry. So that's great that we get the chance to write cyber, to write EPLI, to write equipment breakdown because of those folks. Would you like to add any additional coverages? This is where that customizable thing is. If I select yes, you can see all of those additional things show up from the customizable. So I'm not going to go through all of them because they're pretty straightforward. We're going to say no and move on. Additional interests, very straightforward screen. This is a nice, easy one. Blankets, we are not, we're restaurants. You know, add your blankets on because we don't charge for them. It's not like we're writing contractors who need additional insureds every other day, right? So put the blanket on in all cases because we don't charge at all. And as I'm sure you all know, like the most that it is we wind up seeing is like a mortgage holder or a landlord or something like that. Now, if you do want to schedule them individually, you can do so here and you'll get that option to add them all in their specifics. You can always do that post bind as well. We can go through and add those in too as endorsement. But, you know, obviously there's no charge for that either. We would just encourage you to use these blankets because they're there and they're free and save you and your insured the hassle. All right, so the discount screen, to get back to that awesome question that was asked in chat and one of my favorite things to talk about on here. So if they're part of an association, if they have a Google business profile, if they're part of a franchise, if there's a number of other reasons that you want to give them additional credits, we offer tons and tons of credits. And the reason for that is that we want to meet you at pricing. Our goal here is to sell based off of a very strong product. We're really proud of what it is that we've built, what we've got filed with the states that we work for, the partners that it is that we use and their stability in the marketplace. And we also really love the service that we can provide you. And hopefully that's been abundantly clear throughout all of this. So when you work with partners who have great products and focus on the service, oftentimes pricing can, you know, be secondary or tertiary to those things, right? So here is where it is that we do our best to make up and make sure that we're still competitive in the market. So make sure you're adding on all the discounts that should apply to your insured. Obviously do it accurately, right? So for instance, like if you put in here that you want to add additional credits and the business's full-time employee turnover was less than 50% in the last 12 months, but they just opened in 2024, like maybe don't put that one on, right? But we got lots of opportunities here. And then my favorite question, like I said, I get so excited about this because I've dealt with this throughout my entire career, and to have this integrated directly into the system with your feedback and exactly what it is that we need to know is something really special. So I would really recommend that you use this box. Would you like to refer the submission to underwriting for additional pricing considerations? What that means is that yes or no, whether or not it flags for referral, this will automatically make it flag, and you can put your target pricing and your credit justification in here, and our underwriting team 100% looks at this and tries to hit it if they can. Now, we're only filed up to a certain amount of IRPM credits with the state, so we'll do the best that we can. But that being said, I love this box. Our underwriters love this box because it gives them a clear and tangible reason to target something and get there for you. So utilize this at every opportunity that makes sense for you. So there's a little tucked away box down there at the bottom, but it's super important. So yes, even if all the pricing comes out and you're like, man, I could really use another 1,000 off of this or whatever, check this yes, come back in here, check yes, tell us what you want the target premium to be and why, and we'll do our best to hit it. And even if it's just that, you know, you've got other quotes in the market and you'd like to write this with Rainbow and they're coming in a little bit less than us, it's perfectly legitimate to tell us that's why. We love to hear it. It helps make all of our jobs so much easier. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, our quotes are good for 60 days. So you can quote further out in advance. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you plan on binding ahead of time because that quote will expire. However, it's super simple to go through the process. You all saw it, even though I talked a whole bunch. It's pretty straightforward. You would just go through and requote it. But just know that we can also backdate if you need us to, but you're going to have to reach out to us for that. We can only do it up to 7 days, and we need a no known loss letter. A signed no known loss letter in all of those occasions. So if you need to backdate, it is potentially possible. Just reach out to us. That chat button's great. That chat button is a great opportunity to do that. Okay. I wonder if something's just wrong with mine. Okay, so I'm not gonna spend a lot of time talking about this. Pay-as-you-go is something that we plan to offer in the future. Just note that this is something that's very similar to work comp. What we want to do is make sure that we've got, what we're aiming to do is to provide some seasonality and fluctuation to restaurants where that is highly impacted, right? So, during the Christmas time, folks may be out shopping in a mall restaurant and eat tons and tons. But then, come the middle of spring when everybody's back in school and they're all busy doing stuff, they're not nearly as much. So the idea behind Pay As You Go is that the insured would monthly report their sales and then we would adjust premium according. Again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time. Just look for some announcements from us when we're ready to launch that. We're really excited to have that as a feature for y'all because we feel like it's really great for restaurants. It also saves the end of term audit as well. So anyway, pay monthly and pay in full are the two options that are available right now. If they choose to pay in full, they will get a 5% discount in every single state except for California, because California doesn't let us for some reason. I don't know. Do you know, Naomi? You're from California. Why doesn't California let us do 5%?
Because California likes to make everything difficult. So
Well, you can say that as a resident.
it
I
might
can't.
be a discriminatory issue, maybe, because they're like, you don't get a discount if you can afford to pay in full. I don't know.
Are California residents a protected class? That's what.
Probably. I mean, let's be honest.
Okay, so all right, good. Thank you for that. Because like I said, as a California resident, you can say that. I don't live there. I feel wrong to accuse you all of something. Anyway,
Offense taken.
good. All right, excellent. So yeah, just note that pay in full 5% discount everywhere except for California, also option to pay monthly. We can do both credit card and ACH. ACH is fairly new for us, so you'll just need to reach out through that chat button, let us know, and we will transition something over to have ACH available. By default, it is credit card only. ACH is there. One important thing to point out, because it is still so new for us, we cannot change that midterm. So if you bind with a credit card, we can change the credit card that's on the file. We can update it, make sure that payments are coming out okay on whatever account is needed for a credit card. We cannot switch it over to ACH and vice versa. If you bind on ACH, we cannot switch it over to credit card in the future, right? It's hopefully something that we can offer down the road, but because it's so new, just know that what you set it as at bind is what it needs to stay at. And if you want ACH, just reach out to us and we're happy to set it for that. Okay, so last couple things to show. As if all of those discounts weren't enough, we have this awesome Rainbow Rewards program, where as long as there's still credits available that we're filed for, just note that if there isn't, it may not show up. But you can apply savings by uploading 5 photos. Various places around the restaurant, our underwriting team checks them just to make sure that everything is clean and orderly, and you get a pretty substantial discount for that. On this particular quote, it's $716. I think it's right around 5% in most cases, right? So note that that's available, and there's a couple of different ways that you can actually engage your insured with this as well. So you can send this quote out to them with this little share button right here. So again, using that email address that you input at the very beginning of the process, you can share the quote with them, and that will create their account ahead of time prior to binding. And that helps in two different ways, right? So they can get in and they can access the quote that way, but you could also just download it here and send it to them. Really what that does is it allows them to put payment information in remotely and or add those photos in remotely as well. You can share the quote here too. So then the insured can get in and add those things if your office doesn't like to collect payment information, if it's hard for you to get out and see the insured location at the time that they need you to, whatever the case may be, like just know that that share button is there to help facilitate some of that. After that, I guess the last thing for me to point out is that our quote PDF is super robust. We have just tons and tons and tons of pages here where it outlines every single thing that is part of it, the premium associated with it, deductible, all of that. It goes into the charges associated with it, understanding the policy fee, the installment fee. If there's a credit card fee, it would be on there then, right? So all of that is broken down. Plus, it goes through all the different forms that are options. I'm just like skipping a ton of stuff. It'll show you all the forms that are going to get applied. Goes through payment schedules, tons of things. And then at the very end, it goes through and it shows the answers to all of the questions that you filled out as part of this quoting process. And it has a signature block. So the entire intent behind that is not that we want this. We don't want you to send us a signed document. We won't do anything with it. This is for you. So now you've gone through the whole thing. You've filled it all out per what the insured has asked you for, and they sign off saying that this is what it is that I want, right? And there's no doubt as to what it is that they agree to. So we add all that in for your own files if you choose to keep it. Just know that that's there as a nice little safety precaution for y'all. And I do believe that is it for me. I'm going to rest my voice the rest of the day. Did I miss any questions? We got any other good stuff? Are we past time?
Yes, we are.
Oh, shoot. Well, sorry, everybody. I got excited.
No, that's okay. We got lots of great questions and a great webinar, if I do say so myself. Jerry said, looks like we can't get the proposal if it's been referred.
That's
yes.
correct. And the reason for that is that we haven't approved the quote yet. So that's why you're not getting it. We don't want a quote out there that looks like we've approved it if our underwriting team hasn't reviewed it yet. That is correct. I'm glad that you pointed that out.
All right. I think we got everyone else's questions answered, but if we did miss yours or you didn't hear the answer, again, like Jason has been mentioning, please feel free to chat in. You will likely get Jason or Naomi anyway. So, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Jason, Naomi, and Adrian for the webinar and for answering folks' questions. And we will see everyone not next week for the holiday, but we will see folks in 2 weeks.
Also, I'm accepting fan art of what we would all look like with wings.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh gosh. Mhm.
Submit that. And I can't promise you a discount, but I will try to get you one.
Maybe
It's
we can send you like a sticker or something, you know?
Something. I just want to see it.
Yeah.
Have a great day, everybody.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone.